I've owned and restored this 1968 Jaguar S-Type 3.4 litre over the last 6.5 years. In that time, I've stripped and rebuilt the front and rear suspension. I've done extensive welding, particularly on the underbody, replacing all the door bottoms and various bits along the sills. The car's been completely repainted. The front bumpers, rear bumpers, overriders, and the chrome has been replated. I've completely refitted the new interior, so the seats have been retrimmed in suede green rather than the original black vinyl. It's got new carpets, it's got a complete new set of wood. The headlining is new. I've refurbished the Webasto roof, and the wheels have just come back from being refurbished as well, and it's got new Blockley tyres all round. Under the bonnet, the engine and gearbox, I've done nothing other than service, but I have rebuilt the carburetors, the twin carburetors, replaced all of the cooling pipes, replaced the heater pipes, rebuilt the heater box. The steering box has been rebuilt as well. Have I made any money on it? Absolutely not. I think I've about broken even, and that's obviously not accounting for my time. Has it been worth it though? Yes, of course. I've learnt a huge amount. Today is actually my final day with the car though. Someone is on the train at the moment coming up from Kent to come and buy it. So I've got very mixed emotions at the moment because I've put so much time into this car. So what I'm going to do now is go on a final drive of my S-Type so that I can have something to remember it by, and I've got a few final impressions that I can really look back on in years to come. When you get into a classic Jag like this, you really have to be impressed at the amount of wood and leather and the old school charm that it's got. The bank of gauges are clearly there. The very tactile switches here, which both look and feel really, really satisfying. And the big dials with the rev counter and the vehicle speed directly in front of you. This one's an automatic, so I've got my PRND-L in front of me. And then down here I've got controls for the heating and the radio, of course. Startup sequence for one of these is turn the key on. In this case the fuel pump is already primed, but when you've left the car for a bit you'll hear tick 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 tick, and it slows down. Then you know that you've got fuel pressure. Then you can press the starter button here to start the engine. So in this case it's a warm restart, so it's a pretty warm day and the engine's up to temperature already. From cold, it's best to let the engine warm up quite a lot before you get going. It just feels more comfortable that way. Oil and water gauges are the ones that you really need to keep an eye on. So oil pressure, very important with the XK straight 6 engine. You really need to make sure that you've got good oil pressure, which this one does. And then this one, because it's nearly fully warm, the dial sits right in the middle of the gauge and doesn't move regardless of temperature, so all of that's nicely under control. And as I've replaced all the heater pipes on this car, of course that's a big advantage, so I know that the cooling system's in very good condition with a nice fresh coolant in the circuit as well. So I'm going to go for a bit of a drive now and just capture a few impressions of what it's like to drive. It's only got front seat belts, this car. They were only supplied as standard with front seat belts. There are actually mounting points in the body for rear, but they weren't fitted. And it's an old-fashioned aircraft style buckle that you clip into place here, pull it tight, and it's fixed. So if you want to lean forward for something, you can't. Right, so I'll put it into D. In this case D1, so we start off in first gear rather than second. The handbrake's down the side here that's already off, and pull away. One of the key impressions I get from the S-Type, particularly with the automatic gearbox, is just general smoothness. The straight 6 engine is very, very smooth, almost turbine-like, but you do get a bit of induction roar when you put your foot down. And there's a small amount of exhaust presence from the twin pipes at the rear, and it's a really nice front to rear balance. Again, a key thing about the S-Type, particularly versus the Mark II, and something it has in common with the E-Type and the Mark X of the same era, is the rear suspension, the independent rear suspension. It makes the ride really, really smooth and cosseting, and the primary ride is good even by modern day standards. This is actually quite a bumpy track I'm driving along here. but it smooths it all out. Yes, the body's a little bit creaky and the secondary ride isn't quite as good, but it wafts along. That's the general impression. It's certainly a thing that I get from the smooth shape of the body, the smooth engine and powertrain noise, and the ride. It's really refined. This is a great cruiser. It's a 3-speed automatic. It will press on if you really want it to. There's a bit of body roll, but it does feel old-fashioned. It's got this really thin-wheeled rimmed steering wheel. But overall, it's a lovely, compelling, refined package, you know, luxury if you will. So the combination of the wood and leather, the powertrain noise, all of that is really, really compelling. I exit this little village and I put my foot down again, it will pick up its heels, squat a little bit from the rear, and off we go. One thing I particularly like about this car is the brakes. Being a late car in build, so it was April 1968 this car was built. It's got the Girling brakes, which are better than the earlier S-Type, so it's actually brakes that are common with the 420 that was also built in at the same time. And these brakes, by even modern standards, are good. The car does pitch a lot when you put your foot on the brakes. Jag driving past there. But the actual feel and progression of the brakes is surprisingly good. So it's one thing I was really pleased about when I first started driving this car after the restorations, how good the brakes are. Body roll is at first almost alarming in the terms of the rate at which you get into roll. But once you get used to it, actually it's fine. It just signals, you know, you're really loading up into the corner. It can be chucked around quite a lot. It just doesn't sit flat like so many modern cars do, but that's absolutely fine. Slow down a little bit, take your corner, accelerate out of it. I live in the Midlands, not too far from Coventry. This car is absolutely ideal for a day trip down to the Cotswolds. Head down the Fossway and go and visit the beautiful towns and villages in the Cotswolds. It's just ideal for that. Go out for a nice afternoon of motoring, stop off for a meal, have some afternoon tea and head back up the Fossway. It doesn't have modern day climate control, of course, but this one's got an aftermarket, fitted probably in the early 1970s, Webasto roof. It actually is improving the ventilation a lot on today, because you do get a fair bit of engine and gearbox temperatures coming through into the cockpit. So these quarter lights really help ventilate the cockpit when you're driving along with the roof closed. Obviously today I've got the benefit of opening the Webasto roof, and that really is an advantage. Really does waft along so pleasantly. I don't need to rush it. We're going quite quick, as fast as we would in a modern car, but it's not really the kind of thing you want to hustle. Visibility all round is excellent. We've got nice slim pillars here. There's plenty of glass area. Sir William Lines didn't like cars with headrests. He liked to keep the top of the seats below the waistline of the car. Not so good if you have a whiplash style accident, but in terms of the aesthetics and the view out of the car, it really is excellent. We've got a very clear view out the rear screen, and even the old-fashioned wing mirrors that of course are on the wing, I've got a good view behind me. Of course, it's lovely to see the leaper on the bonnet. One of the things we always see is the leaper up at an angle like this. On this car, actually, it's at this angle, and it really is purposefully leaping forward. It's a great view down the bonnet. As always, keep an eye on oil pressure, just above 40 pound-foot at the moment. Water gauge directly in the centre, just where I want it. I'm doing just under 50 miles an hour on this B road here that's recently been resurfaced. There's a bit of loose gravel, but about 2,250 RPM. So because it's a 3-speed auto, it is relatively short geared. Of course, this car came out in 1968, so long distance motorway journeys weren't quite so much a thing as they are now. I do genuinely really like the feel of these brakes. Very good indeed. Of course, one of the advantages you've got with an old car like this is there's no ABS modulator. Bleeding the brakes is something relatively simple to do. There aren't loads of complicated pathways for the brake fluid to go into to get air bubbles stuck. This S-Type's got power steering fitted. Not all of them did, but it's very much a desirable optional extra. It reduces the turns lock to lock and just makes it that much more. Again, it goes back to the smoothness of the car overall. Just makes it so much easier, so low speed manoeuvring isn't a problem. I wouldn't say it's got a lot of steering feel, but it has a certain amount, and obviously in combination with the body roll, you've got an idea of what's going on with the limits of the car. Quite a lot of wind rush, of course, with the Webasto roof open, and this wind deflector is just kind of making it slightly more civilised in the cockpit here. My final day with the car happened to coincide with the Jaguar Breakfast Club, a monthly gathering that's normally held at the British Motor Museum at Gaydon. This was a very fitting way for me to sign off my time with the car. Despite the fact that it was parked amongst some far more glamorous machinery than mine, it drew some admiring glances and some compliments on the restoration. On the way out, I was able to give chase and draw alongside this D-Type replica, certainly not something you see or hear every day. So as the sun sets on my time with the car, I have to say that I've grown immensely fond of it, and I think it's a very underrated classic Jag. It's a shame there aren't more left, but the ones that are out there are definitely worth preserving. For 6.5 years this car's been in my custodianship, and I'm sure its next owner will get as much pleasure out of it as I have. Perhaps I'll get another S-Type again one day. It's been nearly 2 months now since my old S-Type went, and to be honest I miss it quite a lot. So what I've gone and done is bought another green S-Type. Well, not quite exactly the same S-Type, to be honest. This is a 2005 S-Type R. It's probably one of the cheapest on the market, and it does have a few problems, and to be honest I'm still learning to trust it. Thanks very much for watching, and please join me again when I start getting to the details of what needs to be done to this car.